calling us Nazis just doesn't cut it anymore.
All the major terror activities, or most of them that we can name, are linked to our asylum and our immigration system.
Jihad al-Shami entered the UK from Syria as a young child.
What actually Sharia means. What do we mean? How does it operate? Where do they operate?
To that specific question, Peter, the answer is we don't know.
Muslims are invading the UK. And I wrote saying, no, they're not.
Entered the UK from Syria as a young child before being granted British citizenship aged just 16.
They're not invading the UK. They're being welcomed in, and there's a big difference.
The 2021 Liverpool terrorist, born in Iraq. The 2021 terrorist who assassinated Sir David Ames. His parents were from Somalia.
If a group of people move to a country en masse and say, we wish to operate as a large collective in this country with rules that don't sit well with the existing legal status quo, but you know what? You can't do anything about it.
But actually going back much further than that, with the rape gangs, I mean, what is that if not an act of war? If something doesn't change, I think that we're going to see more and more violence on the streets. We could in a way say that that has already begun. To come to a country and to, and to essentially kidnap, enslave, rape, torture, and kill thousands of vulnerable, working class, often parentless, indigenous white girls. What is that if not an act of war?
What did the powers that be thought that was going to happen when millions of people who come from backwards cultures, who have literally nothing to do with us, they believe the complete opposite of what we believe? What would the powers that be thought that it would happen when millions upon millions of those people came to the Western world? Did they think they were going to integrate? Did they think they were going to just become like us because they came here? And you have to think one thing, and it's this. If we ever went to any North African or Muslim Asian country and we tried to do what they do here, we would be persecuted, killed, kicked out of the country, etc., etc., etc. We would never be allowed to go to any Northern African country or any Muslim country and just impose our way of life, our traditions, our cultures, our religion, make ethnic enclaves in any Muslim country. We would be killed for doing so. And you never see people from Europe going to North American or Muslim countries. Why is that? Why do they want to come here? And we allow them to replicate what they do in what made their country not work in the first place. We let them replicate that here. I'll tell you why. It's because of our Christian heritage. People don't think about this. Usually people just want to be nice and just want to say to to the newcomers, well, you can practice your religion, you can do what you want, you can have your customs, your traditions, and you can replicate them here. People don't bear in mind that all of those things, all of those freedoms, they're all Christian. They all stem from the Greco-Roman Christian heritage. Because that doesn't happen in the rest of the world. You are not able to be free in most of the world. There's only a few countries where you're allowed to be free. Most of them Western countries. If we continue on this path, there's only two options that the future bears for us, and I'll get into them in a second. I'll go back to the point of people coming to the Western world and not integrating. There has to come a point where we're gonna have to face this problem. Right now, if you try to talk about it, they'll just call you racist, Islamophobe, far right, and all the rest. We all know the epithets that they will paint you as if you try to raise this issue. It's obvious that multiculturalism is not working. It's obvious that the experiment of multiculturalism was bound to fail from the beginning. And there's a very simple explanation for why it was bound to fail from the beginning. And it's this. we are human beings and we act like human beings. And there's an undeniable trait in the human being, and it is to be suspicious of other tribes. It's just how human beings are. It's completely natural. That doesn't mean that we can rise above it because we're animals that can reason. But if you scratch on the surface, we are animals. We are always going to be suspicious of other tribes, other people that are not like us. And we even have scientific evidence for this, which is called assortative mating, which is people usually tend to find partners that are close to them, not only in values and principles, but also in terms of appearance. We tend to gravitate to people that are like us. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. That's just being a human being. Of course, you can't take it to the extreme where you impose yourself on other cultures and other tribes. I've talked about it as well in other videos. But that is a fundamental trait of human beings. That cannot be just washed away by 20 years of leftist propaganda trying to make everyone think that you have to love everyone and you just have to open your arms to everyone that comes from anywhere in the world. Because that's just not simply how the human brain works. That's not how human nature is. Again, it doesn't mean you can impose yourself on other cultures. That's a different topic. But in terms of integration, in terms of Muslims not being able to assimilate and integrate to the Western world, of course, some people might also point out, oh, there's a lot of Muslims in the Western world that are completely peaceful. They're not going around stabbing people and blowing themselves up. Why don't they do it? Because if you go to the polls, a sizable minority support violence, support terrorism. If you don't want to go that far, support downright almost terrorist ideas. They support women being oppressed. They support not being able to criticize their religion. So it doesn't take a genius to find out that a lot of those people that they call peaceful are not peaceful because they want to be peaceful. My opinion is that a lot of them are peaceful because they're scared of the consequences. It's that old Nietzschean idea. Are you moral or are you just afraid of the consequences? I think in this case, it applies a lot to Islam because their polls reflect that. Again, I don't know when the Western guilt got so big that we just thought that letting everyone from North Africa and Muslim Asian countries was ever going to be beneficial for the West. It's obviously that it's not beneficial. It's obvious that it's not beneficial. If we continue on this path, this is just going to get worse and worse and worse. The ethnic enclaves are just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. The white flight that's happening all around the cities is just going to accentuate and just get worse and worse and worse because, again, we tend to like people that are like us. It's human nature. It's not being a Nazi. It's not being far right. It's just human nature. And like I said before, there's only two options of how this will resolve. And the two options that anyone who has eyes can see they're just bound to happen is either war, because the people of the Western world that want to defend the Western way of life, that want to defend the Western heritage, the Western traditions, the Western religion, we inherited the greatness of the West. That's not a given. That doesn't happen all around the world. It's in the West. The Western greatness doesn't translate to North Africa and Asian Muslim countries. If we let that go, if we let that Christian heritage go, if we don't try to impose what made the West great on the newcomers. The inevitable consequence is that the newcomers will get to a point where they think they can exert their own traditions, their own religions, their own customs, their own values, their own principles on the West. We have to radically change in the West the way we treat the newcomers. We have to come to some sort of plan, solution, I don't know, to impose, and yes, I use the word impose on the newcomers, our way of life. Because if you want to go somewhere, that old saying, if you go to Rome, do as the Romans do. Well, that saying developed for a reason. Because a country that doesn't impose its own way of life, it's bound to disappear. It's bound to not be a country. That's what makes a country. Its traditions, its values, its religion, its principles, that all stem from thousands and thousands of years. When people come to this country, they should be, again, made to accept the cultural traditions, again, values, principles, religion, etc. I don't go as far as to say we should impose the religion, because, and that's another issue that happens in Western countries, is the freedom of religion that we evolved over thousands of years. The concept of secular and religious, it's a Western concept. So when the newcomers arrive with other religions, we allow them to hold their beliefs. But I love what Ayaan Hirsi Ali said, where she said, our constitutions doesn't have to be a suicide pact. I really loved that, because I would go a step further and say our religion is not a suicide pact. The fact that Christianity promulgates love for your neighbor, love for thy enemy, etc., that doesn't mean that we do not have the right to defend our own way of life, our own principles, our own values. And this is to anyone. I mean, I'm not even going to only apply it to the Muslims. I will also apply it to maybe more fundamentalist Jews. This applies to anyone who comes with another way of life that's alien to the Western way of life. Here's the kicker with the Jews, and it's, I don't see Jews blowing themselves up and killing people, killing thousands of people of the Western world. I don't see Jews going around stabbing people. So while they might have their own fundamentalist way of professing Judaism, I don't see them killing anyone. So that's a separate issue. We can talk about maybe the power that Jews hold over society because of their own achievements. Again, that's a different discussion. We're talking about the most dangers that Western Europe right now faces. And it's of our own making. It's because after the Second World War, we don't want to impose on anyone that comes to our side of the world anything to do with national values, national ethics, national principles, because we're just ashamed of what the Nazis did. And again, this all goes back to Christianity, Christian guilt. People don't think about this consciously. People in their everyday life don't think how the Christian heritage shapes their beliefs so much. They don't want to think that one of the reasons why the far left, the left, whatever you want to call it, it's so quote-unquote tolerant. That's a Christian heritage. That's a Christian value that doesn't happen in the rest of the world. In most of the world, or most of the world that's not Christian, and except in some South African Christian countries, except Western Christian countries, the amount of compassion that people have from anyone that's not of their clan, of their family, it's near zero. So again, war, it's one of the only options, because it will come to a point where the people who want to defend the Western world and the people who don't want to defend the Western world and actively try to undermine the Western tradition, the Western values, the Western principles, the Western heritage, religion, etc., they will come to a point where those two ideas will clash. And in Europe, as different to America, we have Islam. And that is one of the biggest threats that we face, because Islam will marry that part of Western world that wants to undermine the West itself because of that Christian guilt that I explained. And there will come to a point where if this doesn't change, nothing is done about this, the inevitable consequence is war. What happens when two factions that want opposed things don't come to an agreement? War. It's the only logical conclusion. And at the end of the day, we are human beings, and war is the natural state of human beings, because we're animals at the end of the day. And the way human beings resolve their issues, if there's no dialogue, is war. Calling us Nazis far right doesn't work anymore. They keep trying it, but it's obvious that the spell that word had, it's completely broken. It doesn't work. Could this change? Could this turn around? Maybe. There's a lot of people much more intelligent than me that can come with plans of, like I said, impose the newcomers on the country, that if they don't meet a certain criteria that can be completely reasonable and logic to stay in Western Europe. If you don't meet this, you have to go. It doesn't have to be something that's imposed by violence. It can be something that's just imposed by common sense and logic. If they don't accept it, then I'm sorry, but you're not allowed here. I always like when people use the example of the house. If you invite someone to your house and they steal, they kill your cousin, they make the house a mess, what's your reaction to that? Kick them out of the house. If they come to your house and try to impose their own religion, their own way of life, their own values, their own principles to what you want to do in your own house, the logical thing that you would do is kick them out of the house. I feel a bit pessimistic of the future. I 100% feel that if we don't stop letting people who explicitly want to undermine our way of life, if we don't stop people infiltrating our politics, our halls of power, that obviously and explicitly hate us, then I don't see how this will end in anything but violence. I hope that doesn't happen, but I see no way out. I hope that people that really do want the Western world, Western Europe, to prosper, to make it to nicer shores than what we are right now, I hope those people can come together. I hope the most intelligent of those people are able to come up with policies, with sensible policies, reasonable, logical, that want the best for Western Europe. That's what I truly want. It can happen. It's difficult because the people who oppose that, because there is some people who just don't want Western Europe to be great, and some of them are leaving them on us. So unless the people that want the best for the West, the intelligent people that can make this happen, come together and just make it happen, one way or another, whatever it takes, I don't see how this will fix itself. I'm pessimistic. I don't want to be, but I am, and I hope I'm wrong. Thank you very much for watching, and like always, see you in the next one.